Now, the history of Islamic law is something that I will have to skate over rather briefly. The important thing to remember is that there are divergent interpretations, and that within 200 years of the Prophet's death, these coalesced into four broad traditions of interpretation, which are known as madhabs. I spelt this incorrectly. There's two H's there. A madhab, sometimes translated as a rite, R-I-T-E, because obviously it includes patterns of worship. The type of prayer done by a Maliki might be different to the prayer said by a Hanafi, in small details, whether you hold your hands like that or like that. In about 30% of the rulings of Islamic law, there are differences from madhab to madhab. There are 4 of these in Sunni Islam, and all 4 of these exist today, and they prevail in different countries. I'm not sure it's necessary for me to go into great detail there, except to say that in North Africa, for instance, the Maliki madhab prevails. Why don't I just write down their names, since it's fairly important. They are named after the founders of these particular schools, who were 2nd and 3rd century. I got this wrong. Jurist Shafi'i, Hanbali, last but not least, Hanafi. And they represent different styles of interpretation. For instance, the Maliki madhab attributes more importance to the practice of the city of Medina, the city of the Prophet, as an indicator of the Prophet's sunnah than it does to hadith. And so some of the rulings in the Maliki madhab will be different. The Shafi'is and the Hanbalis emphasize very much a literal adherence to the hadith, even if a hadith has been transmitted only by one person. The Hanafis use reason and also the consensus of the early Iraqi jurists more than do the other schools. But as I said, only 30% of the rulings differ between them. All are considered to be equally authoritative and legitimate. They're not sects. They don't differ in doctrine. They differ just in the little details of practice. They differ in terms of the number of their adherents. The Hanbalis are very few. There's probably only about 5 or 6 million nowadays. It's the official madhab of Saudi Arabia. There are some in Syria as well. The Malikis prevail in North Africa and West Africa. Nigeria is largely Maliki. Shafi'is are in Egypt, Syria, Uzbekistan, and Malaysia and Indonesia. And the Hanafis, who are the most numerous, perhaps 60% of all Muslims are Hanafis, prevail overwhelmingly in the subcontinent and in Turkey. And Bosnia is also Hanafi. So those are the 4 madhabs that are considered normative in Sunni Islam. And I want to use this as an opportunity to talk a little bit about sectarian divisions. In Islam, sects originated over disputes over political succession and over points of law, and doctrinal differences only crept in much later. Sunni Islam, made up of these 4 rites, accounts today and in most periods of Muslim history for around about 90% of all Muslims. So Islam has been comparatively lucky in not being too divided by schism. 90% of Muslims are Sunnis. There is a small sect which originated right at the beginning of Islam called the Kharijites, to whom you will occasionally see allusions. Nowadays, there's only perhaps 500,000 of them left. Kharijites. A few villages in Algeria, and Oman is officially a Kharijite country. These are rigorists who originated for political reasons. Because they refused to accept the authority of the 4th Caliph, Ali. They thought he wasn't pious enough, so they withdrew from him. In practice, you're very unlikely ever to meet any. Much more successful were the other great schismatic group in Islam, the Shia. That's the plural. The name of the denomination is singular. One individual person from the Shia is called a Shi'i with an I at the end, sometimes partially anglicized to Shiites. Famous because the Shia are the prevailing denomination in Iran, They also account for about half of the population of Iraq, maybe a third of the population of Pakistan, the majority of the population of Azerbaijan. Those are the four places really where you'll find Shia. In the West, they're not particularly numerous. They have a few mosques in the United States and a handful of mosques in England, but they don't have an extensive diaspora. The point of dispute between the Shia and the Sunnis, again, is not basically doctrinal. It is to do with questions of legitimate succession to the Prophet. The Shia believe that Ali, the Prophet's son-in-law, should have succeeded him as temporal ruler of the Muslims following the Prophet's death. So we get this name Shia, which means the faction. The Shi'at Ali are the faction of Ali, the upholders of Ali's legitimate caliphate, i.e. succession to the Prophet. The Sunnis say, no, we believe that Abu Bakr, the Prophet's close friend and companion, was the legitimate first ruler, and he indeed became the first ruler. So, as you can see, it's not primarily a denominational split, it's to do with early politics. But, as is quite frequent in the history of religions, an originally political split acquired a doctrinal colouring over time, and the Shia do have certain beliefs that are distinct from the beliefs of Sunni Muslims, most conspicuously in their concept of the source of authority in religion. As I mentioned, Sunni Muslims accept the Quran, the Hadith, and a few other things like this ijma' and qiyas as the sources of religious authority. The Shia say, no, we accept the Quran and we'll accept some of the Hadith as a secondary authority, but we're really more interested in the interpretations of the law as delivered by the Prophet's descendants through his daughter Fatima, who married the Caliph Ali. And so sometime in the 2nd or 3rd century of Islam, we find appearing a theory of infallibility. 12 imams, descendants of the Prophet, who were regarded as infallible, rather in the sense of contemporary papal infallibility, if you like, that their every utterance and form of behaviour was guided by God and hence formed part of the Sunnah, was an authoritative source of law and doctrine. And this is the point at which the Shia depart doctrinally from Sunni Muslims. Sunni Muslims accept the Quran, the Hadith, and these lesser sources. The Shia accept the Quran and the utterances of the 12 Imams. The 12th Imam, a certain Muhammad al-Mahdi, disappeared. He went into a state of occultation. Again, one of these slightly uncomfortable Orientalist translations of the Arabic word ghaiba, which means disappearance. He just vanished. And according to mainstream Shia belief, he didn't die. He merely was occulted, entered the hidden realm, and he will appear as the eschatological savior of the Shia and of the Muslim world at the end of time. He will be the Mahdi, the divinely guided savior. And the mainstream Shia belief is that the hidden Imam, who is in the state of occultation, is in mystic communication with the appointed hierarchical leadership of the Shia Muslims. I mentioned that Sunni Islam doesn't have a hierarchy, doesn't like hierarchies, it's against the mentality. Shia Islam is more Christian in a sense, in as much as it has this idea of an ultimately infallible hierarchy inspired by God that mediates authority. Christianity's case, the church being the bride of Christ. In the case of the Shia, the hidden Imam being the sort of quasi-divine figure who inspires the living representatives of the denomination with infallible guidance. Also, the emphasis on the idea of a saviour at the end of time, much more important for the Shia than for the Sunnis, suggests that there's a parallel between Shiism and Christianity, which is perhaps interesting. The 12 Shia, those who accept these 12 Imams, account for the great majority of the Shia. There's also a smaller denomination called the Ismailis. They're called Ismailis because they follow the elder son of the 7th Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, the 6th Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. and his descendants, which the 12er Shia don't. And they don't accept there are 12 imams. They say that the succession of imams continues to the present day. And the main Ismaili denomination now recognizes the Aga Khan as the present imam. He is the divinely inspired, immaculate leader. You've heard of the Aga Khan, presumably? Yeah? It's a kind of international banker with associations with the UN and big business interests, very wealthy. There's perhaps 3 or 4 million Ismaili Muslims in the world today, mainly in fairly remote places. There are quite a few amongst the Asian community of Kenya. You'll find quite a few in rural areas of India. You'll find them in Badakhshan, in northern Afghanistan, and so forth, and quite an extensive diaspora in the West. So that's the sectarian situation. As you'll see, it's complex, but not so complex as it is, say, in Christianity, for reasons that scholarship is not entirely clear about, despite the absence of a hierarchical organization that can define and, if necessary, impose an orthodoxy. Islam has been less subject to schism than has Christianity. So that the practices and beliefs taught and followed in a little mosque in Senegal, in West Africa, really do not differ from those that you'll find in a mosque in Sumatra, at the other end of the Muslim world, despite the absence of a hierarchy to hold the show together.